Has directed the immediate payment of the State House electricity bill owed the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. Special advisor to the President, Bayo Ononuga, says the decision follows a thorough reconciliation of accounts between the State House management and AEDC. He added that contrary to an initial claim of 923 million naira debt in a newspaper advertorial, the outstanding bill stands at 342.3 million naira.
In the meantime, the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, has assured the public that the debt will be settled before the weekend. He's also calling other ministries, departments and agencies to follow suit and pay their outstanding electricity bills. Well, on Monday, the AEDC issued a 10-day notice to the State House and 85 other government MDAs, warning of disconnection if the 47.1 billion naira electricity debt is not paid within the stipulated period.
Well, Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins us now for more on this story. Good to see you, and thanks for your time. Well, this is a big shocker. First, well, it's something. It's an industry that we have fair knowledge of, and time and again, the discussions have also said, have always said that governments, agencies, parastatals, the barracks, actually some of his biggest debtors. Looking at what this is about. How does the government really speak of helping that industry when truly it's somehow strangulating the same industry?
That's really a problem. But again, this has a long history. I mean, when I was in that industry, we, at the time it was an issue after privatization, and then President Jonathan issued the executive order, clearly saying that they should, take it at source. I mean, this is a tragedy. Every year, MDAs, including the State House, provide budget for electricity bill, and they never get paid. So the question is, the funds are provided, not paid. Now, think about the military. In fact, with the case of the military, because of its sensitive, and of course the fact that some of the armories or barracks ought to have regular supply of power. So we had meetings, even with the then military heads. I said, look, there must be a way. You can't expect this, maybe our level of lack of professionalism. I mean, you would expect NEPA officials, PSN, AEDC officials to go to those facilities and cut them off or demand before you have another mad dog syndrome, okay? So we agreed that this is the procedure. Once this money comes, you pay. Again, think around it. The whole idea of inefficiency, and this is where the problem is, keep talking about removing subsidy. The minister is bullish about it. And they are saying, look, because government is paying for some of these inefficiencies, but these inefficiencies are also partly part of this non-payment by government. So what happens with regulation is that oftentimes they are passed on as extra costs to consumers. So some of those inefficiencies are actually inefficiencies that the DISCO can control and should be passed on. When I was next chairman, towards the end of our tenure, we discovered that there was a sudden 120% increase in rates. And we looked and discovered that part of it is what we call collection losses. Yeah. The failure or revenue that DISCOs couldn't collect, didn't collect, or didn't bother. And we zero it to zero.
Lack of capacity
we
to
say,
collect.
come to us and show us why consumers should pay for inefficiency. So, for example, most of these debts owed by MDS are being passed on to consumers as inefficiency. And we said it can't work. Of course, the kind of propaganda was politics. But that is real regulation, incentive-based. So what that requires is the DISCOs have to collect their money. In fact, if they have to cut off everybody, they should do that, because government, look at the State House, for example, this year has about 306 billion as budget, okay? Last year, it was around, 2022 was around 148, 2021 and 23, 148. Only 2021, it was around 73 billion. Just with this reconciled figure, just less than 400 million. I mean, why should we require this level of threats? And
for
the president is intervening.
Yeah, to happen.
So this is something they should have done.
My point.
Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, just imagine a situation, a scenario where the AEDC can actually carry out, this threat. What implications would that have, both at the presidential villa and all the MDAs?
I mean, that would be basically stop press, no work. We're already talking about low productivity. We are not a producing economy. And probably that's why they don't care. If you go to the ministries, maybe timeouts, like maybe when there's no light, maybe it's up to 3-4 hours or 5 hours, and people say, well, we don't have light, they read newspaper, they tell stories. So that's huge economic productivity loss. But the reverse of it is that, can you seriously be talking about an efficient energy industry where these are debts that could pay? This is not rocket science. I mean, money is budgeted.
47 billion.
And if you look at the ministries, each of them, including Ministry of Power, including Finance, almost the key ministries, and they have budgets. So what that tells, and this is where I'm worried, we keep talking about outsourcing more inefficiency and cost to ordinary people. If you're a customer, you're owing Disco, Abuja Disco, any Disco, 10,000. Maybe even without due process that NEC provides for, they will disconnect you. Right. So the poor guy, the little guy, is the guy whose head gets broken. That's why sometimes I'm a little bit worried about tariff increases and subsidy removal, because there are many areas of inefficiency you could reduce. And when you do that, you discover that the so-called subsidy will be very minimal, maybe subsidy that you can easily administer to those who need it. So I think that what this speaks to is that the low-hanging fruit of efficiency, we're not pursuing it. I mean, if Abuja Disco gets it for 17 billion in immediately, you can imagine the level of intervention.
Very quickly, just before we wrap this, the IMF, the World Bank, the Bretton Woods, they've been breathing down Nigeria's neck to remove subsidy, not just in petroleum sector, electricity subsidy too. They've been asking for that. And with the situation now, how much worse would that make things, or is it going to improve availability or supply?
I have a clear difference with the World Bank and all this neoliberal economics, and that's very simple. Inefficiency is not notional, it's factual. You don't have to create a notional idea of efficient market and say, okay, remove subsidy. You have to first diagnose and say, what are the cost benefits? What can you remove, what can you add? I mean, for example, the Electricity Act says you should have a power consumer assistance fund, knowing that the transition to a competitive electricity market includes some adverse consequence on low consumers. And electricity is critical to development, health-wise, education. So there's a level in which a country cannot allow its citizens to fall below in per capita wattage. So what do? You can reduce that subsidy by looking at the market and say, what can we improve? Who can pay more? Who ought to pay more? I believe in a market that pays, but at the same time, you can't outsource all this inefficiency, and then the price goes up. For example, 20% increase is a rate shock, but we used to have here 80%. It's not an anathema. You just have to be objective. What are the components of this subsidy? What can we take back? If you pay 47 billion to Abuja Disco, next time the rates may come down because they have inefficiencies are less, and therefore the pricing goes down. So I think we should do the hard work of looking at facts, looking at the situation, contextualizing these policies. I'm not talking about a notional, perfect or inefficient market.
And let's close on this because you were actually driving it home, and it has to do with first looking at the ATC&C losses, which they've not been able to define. Now, looking at what is coming from AEDC, it tells one picture that it's never been a true reflection of what we've always gotten. And it cuts across all discos.
Totally.
And you've also narrowed it down that if these monies were paid some of these discos, then we can now see a revamping of such discos, which ultimately will mean more and better electricity. And so I want you to speak more on that before we leave.
Basically, what I'm saying is this, look, it's called incentive-based regulation. And it's based on the fact that your job is to make sure the discos are efficient. All this pricing, part of it is a collection commercial losses and collection commercial technical. So if you improve collection, you reduce the losses. If you improve commerciality, you reduce the losses. So what we are seeing is that there's so much inefficiency that is reducible because of poor regulation, poor policy, and poor operations. So yes, we can say perfect market pricing, but again, you have to look at the market. So in this case, consumers are probably paying components that ought not to pay. So you have to unbundle it and say, okay, fine. This is exactly the real cost we can go down. Therefore, how do we efficiently distribute it among, and then also, not everybody pays the same thing. Even in the US, you can't cut off people, postpaid meters are still being used. Why? Because some of the people leave job. If you keep them on prepaid, they can't have access to pay for some time. So I think that the notion that we can't subsidize something is wrong economics in a developing economy. You have to be efficient and targeted and limited in subsidy administration. You can't subsidize 1 trillion when the subsidy goes to people in the Federal Ministry of Power who have the power budget and misappropriate it, don't use it, and the government pays debt. No, you have to subsidize the real guys who need the subsidy, and those who can pay, and those who consume, pay what they consume.
Those who can pay are not paying.
That's a problem. And those who can't pay are being asked to overpay. That's wrong economics.
Dr. Sam Amadi will have to say thank you very much for joining us.